Richard Leonard Kuklinski was an American serial killer active between the 50s and 80s. Kuklinski was charged with the murder of 5 men, although he claims to have killed over 100. Let's take a look at the serial killer files.
Kuklinski was born April 11, 1935, in Jersey City, New Jersey. He grew up in a low-income family in a suburban neighborhood. His upbringing was far from normal. His father would often drink himself into a fit of rage and abuse Richard, his siblings, and his mother.
I didn't like my father, as he would beat me just because he felt like it, to get my attention, I guess. He would think nothing of coming in and smacking you, basically. He'd just come in and give you a whooping for no reason whatsoever.
Kuklinski dealt with this the best he could, until his father beat his brother Florian to death. Due to fear from what her husband would do to her, Kuklinski's mother filed Florian's death as accidental, stating that he just fell down the stairs. After this, Kuklinski's father left the family. His mother, not able to fully take care of him, enrolled him in a strict Catholic school. There, the nuns regularly hit Kuklinski with rulers, and unfortunately, his mother, a devout Catholic herself, developed the abusive streak as well. This is when everything started to take a turn for the worse.
Kuklinski began torturing and killing animals to deal with what he was feeling. He said that it gave him power when he felt powerless, a feeling that he would come to crave. Eventually, he began to get harassed by a neighborhood gang called the Project Boys, led by Charlie Lane. Lane would call Kuklinski names like Pollock and would beat him up whenever the chance arose. Kuklinski slowly became fed up with the torment and decided to take matters into his own hands. Kuklinski took a pole from his closet and proceeded to beat Lane until he was certain he had died. He said, once again, that it filled him with a feeling of control, a control that he lacked in his everyday life. Kuklinski then dumped Lane's body and went out for the other members of the Project Boys. Once Kuklinski had found them, he beat all of them within inches of their lives. He had no intentions of killing them. He wanted them to be afraid. He wanted control. Kuklinski was 13 when he killed Lane, and Lane's body has never been found.
Got into a fight in a bar. We got into an argument, a fight. And I hit him with a cue stick. A few too many times. And he died.
How'd you feel after when you found out he had died?
I had felt very bad. Very, very bad. I was upset. I didn't mean.
Kuklinski developed a reputation for his short temper, intimidating stature, and his massive height, as he stood at 6'5". He beat and killed loudmouths and people that annoyed him. He made his money by pirating pornography, hijacking trucks, and robbing stores for the Gambino crime family.
Film lab, where he began to pirate pornographic films and sell them to outside sources connected to the Gambino crime family. This connection led to other criminal activities, and it wasn't long before he went from being a small-time hood to a big-time killer.
His violent behavior was noticed by fellow mobster Roy DeMeo, who saw potential in Kuklinski. Allegedly, DeMeo ordered Kuklinski to murder a random man walking a dog on the street as a test, which he did. After this, DeMeo hired Kuklinski as an enforcer.
To his peers in the Mafia, Kuklinski was a dependable, unquestioning hitman. To the outside world, he was a successful, upstanding family man that vacationed at Disneyland, held barbecues, and ushered mass at his local church. However, one non-mafioso became intimately aware of Kuklinski's violent behavior. Barbara, his wife. Barbara met Richard when she was only 18. They dated for many months when she started to notice that she'd become mostly isolated from anyone other than Kuklinski. When she tried to end the relationship, Richard stabbed her in the back with a hunting knife and threatened to kill her entire family if she left him. According to Barbara, he was prone to violent outbursts of rage, beating and strangling her. Out of fear for the lives of herself and her loved ones, she married Richard in 1962. Adding the 2 children Kuklinski had with his first relationship, they had a daughter in 1964. While he was emotionally abusive toward his children, Barbara claimed that he never physically beat them. Although Richard claimed he most likely wouldn't kill a woman, he nearly beat her to death several times, and according to one of their daughters, threatened to kill her and her siblings if he accidentally killed Barbara. Although he tried to keep his criminal and family life separate, he could not keep his penchant for murder and violence from affecting the ones he loved.
I've never felt sorry for anything I've done other than hurting my family. The only thing I feel sorry for. I'm not looking for forgiveness, and I'm not repenting. No, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I do want my family to forgive me. Oh, boy. I can make this one. Oh, shit. This would never be me. This would not be me. I feel for my family. You see the Iceman cry. Not very macho. But I've hurt people that mean everything to me. But the only people that mean anything to me.
Over his career as a hitman, he allegedly killed an upwards of 200 people. Kuklinski was a ruthless and efficient killer that used any means necessary to dispatch his victims. Kuklinski would stab, beat, strangle, and shoot his victims. His favorite method, however, was poison, especially cyanide. He preferred cyanide because it did not show up on the toxicology tests. Kuklinski would then have to dispose of the bodies, and he had several ways of doing it. To dispose of them, Kuklinski would sometimes put the bodies into oil drums and let them collect dust. Other times, he would crush said oil drums. Sometimes he even cut the body into pieces and scattered them to confuse law enforcement.
Would you ever use a chainsaw? I mean,
To cut someone up? Yes.
Kuklinski once told a reporter that he got an idea from another hitman with the nickname Mr. Softy, who drove around an ice cream truck to seem inconspicuous. Using this idea, Kuklinski would throw the dead bodies of his victims in a freezer of an ice cream truck for an extended period of time to mask the time of death. This is where he got his infamous nickname, the Iceman. Kuklinski continued to use this method for quite some time, but he eventually stopped because detectives found some ice crystals in one of his victims' hearts. Richard made several other mistakes in the 1980s, such as murdering some of his partners in crime and sloppily disposing of the bodies.
On December 27, 1982, a body was discovered at the York Motel in New Jersey. The body was identified as Gary Smith, 37. Smith had been given cyanide and then strangled to death. This was the first of many mistakes Kuklinski was to commit.
In 1986, authorities caught up with Kuklinski. An undercover agent hired Kuklinski for a hit. This agent then gave Kuklinski some apparent cyanide and asked him about his methods, which he discussed in extensive detail. This was recorded and was to be used as evidence against him.
How it was done, I mean, I know guys that went to sleep and never woke up again. I mean, you know.
He says he had one guy, he went and get a hamburger, they come back and he put the cyanide on his hamburger. And we're sitting down and he's telling me, he says, you wouldn't believe it. He says, I'm waiting for this guy to keel over. He says, because once you eat cyanide, usually you'd roll over and that's it. He says, this guy had the constitution of a fucking bull. He says, you wouldn't believe it. He says he wouldn't die, and we're both laughing about this. And I'm saying in the back of my mind, I said, holy God, I said, look at this. I said, what kind of person is this? I said to myself right there, I said, you better cover your butt. I said, because you just don't know with this guy. And he'd be kidding about it, and I'd be laughing. In the back of my mind, I'm saying, this is the devil. No question about it, this is the devil.
You know, I just have a few problems I want to dispose of. I have some rats I want to get rid of.
Yeah. The only fucking thing I don't understand, don't you use a fucking piece of iron to get rid of these fucking people? Use this fucking cyanide?
Why be messy?
When Richard realized that the cyanide did not work after testing it on a stray dog, he decided to walk home and did not go through with the hit. The FBI created a blockade to trap Kuklinski. When searching for clues about his whereabouts, authorities found a gun in a car registered to Barbara, who they tried to arrest. When Kuklinski found out about this, he became infuriated. It took multiple men to take him down and arrest him. Though Richard boasted about murdering over 200 people, he'd only been convicted of 5. Still, he was sentenced to consecutive life sentences in 1988 with no possibility of parole until he turned 110. While incarcerated, he pled guilty to the murder of Peter Calabro, a New York City detective who was killed in 1980.
Throughout his life, Richard Kuklinski strived for the power he lacked in his childhood. This shows that he was a power serial killer, murdering to assert his dominance. Though Richard was never professionally diagnosed with any mental disorders, he has shown symptoms of psychopathy, paranoia, and antisocial personality disorder. In October of 2005, Kuklinski was diagnosed with a rare inflammation of the blood vessels. Though he asked the doctors to resuscitate him if he needed to be, Barbara stated otherwise, and he died in St. Francis Hospital in Trenton, New Jersey, on March 5, 2006. This marked the end of a life that took so many others.
How do you feel about killing?
I don't. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't have a feeling one way or the other. I think if I had a choice, I wouldn't.